Well, good afternoon, everybody. How y'all doing? Pretty good here, and welcome to the channel. Hey, today I want to get on here and talk about my quest for the 2020 Tacoma, and specifically manual transmissions. You know, when I first decided to get a 2020, I thought when Toyota releases them and they start building them, I'll be able to jump in and grab one out of the line. You know, certainly one will be going through, I can put my name on and I'll get it pretty quick. Boy, was I wrong. And the reason is because I want a manual transmission. So when I went to the dealership, sat down with the inventory manager and spec'd it out, he looked to see in my region how many manual transmissions are they building. You'll never believe. One. There was one manual transmission going through and it was already sold. So I had to go ahead and order it as if it had never been placed, which of course it wasn't, which I did. It's on order. Somewhere between 8 and 20 weeks. I sure hope it's closer to 8, but we'll find out. At least I know going in. So why is it that it's so difficult to get a manual transmission Tacoma? Why has the manual transmission gone away? It seems to be almost gone. Again, I think within 5 to 10 years, you won't be able to get one at all. Maybe sooner, I don't know. I believe I read recently that Toyota has stopped manufacturing a manual transmission. It's either the Corolla or the Yaris altogether. You can't even buy a new one now. It's crazy. So what's going on? Well, first of all, a couple of numbers for you. In 2018, Toyota built 245,659 Tacomas. Of those, 5% were manual transmissions, or 12,283. Now, when you take that 12,283 and you spread it across the nation, maybe across the world, that's not very many, right? That's why it's so difficult to put your hands on one. They are out there in the used market, but if you want to get a new one, you pretty much have to start from scratch while you still can. So what has happened? Why is the manual transmission going away? Well, I did a little bit of research, and there are some theories, some reasons out there, I guess. And the first one is because it's believed they're more responsive. They perform better or faster, which is true. It's been proven. You cannot shift as a human as quickly as you can if you have, or as the automatic transmission does, rather. Now, that might not be so important in a truck. I mean, you're not out drag racing it, are you? Or maybe you are, I don't know. But that just leads to the reason why people think it's not good to get a manual transmission. Second point is, automatics are smoother. They don't lurch when you shift. Now, unless you pay a lot of attention when you're shifting, there's always some kind of a little movement when you shift, right? You know, you put the clutch in, and there's always a little bit of a lurch or a movement. It happens to everybody, sometimes worse than others, depending on how much attention you're paying. So it's true, the automatic is a smoother ride. And you know, I know you younger guys out there, you got that hot date beside you, or gals, you don't want to be in your manual transmission jerking all over the place while you're driving. It doesn't make you look very good. Next up, automatics are now more fuel efficient than manual transmissions. And that's because they've been refined so much to such a point, and they're so efficient in choosing the gear they should be in or going from one gear to the other, they don't burn as much fuel. So if you're fuel economy oriented, it makes sense. Obviously, if that's what you're looking for, you wouldn't go out and buy something pound for pound that's actually less efficient. And speaking of pound for pound, did you know the manual transmission actually weighs 20 pounds more than the automatic overall? Who'd have thought? Next up, there's a belief that they are more reliable. This one I don't really understand. You know, an automatic transmission has all these parts and stuff and things in them, more so than the manual transmission does. Now, the reason that maybe people believe this is because of the wear that you put on them yourselves. And some people do treat them a little bit rougher or not as quite as good at shifting as others. Clutch wear, clutch pressure plate failure, things like that. I would argue that it's probably not really the manual transmission itself, although this is a component of it. It's probably more the clutch. I would think that you have to replace the clutch way more than you would ever have to do any work on an automatic. That's probably where it comes from what I understand. Next up, the manual tech hasn't improved. I'd say that's probably true. You know, since the 1970s, when I guess we went from a 4-speed to now having a 6-speed, or even higher if you're driving a Corvette, when you could still get a Corvette with a manual. There hasn't been much improvement, and I'm not really sure how you improve a manual transmission. You know, maybe you make the clutch a little bit lighter so that you're not, you know, bodybuilding your thighs while you're pushing on the clutch. Maybe you make the gears sink a little bit better, but there's not really a lot you can do with a manual transmission. It is what it is. So that's kind of I don't put a lot of credence in that argument. A manual is a manual. Now, there is something new out there, and this is what is being called a ManuMatic. There's a new word, a ManuMatic. These are automatics with the manual shifting capability, or what they call manual shifting. You know, like sport mode. You can put it over into sport mode, and then you can pull on those little plates on the steering wheel, those little paddles. That's not shifting, but a lot of people like that. I guess they get the feel or the thought that they're actually shifting, and that's enough for them, and they're very popular right now. Whether you get them as paddles on the steering wheel or still a shifter that you can move over a notch, kind of click that up and down, trying to get even a little closer to having a stick shift there. Doesn't do it for me. I've had cars that have those. I don't use them, probably because I know what a real manual is, and it just doesn't make sense to me. You either have an automatic or you have a manual. You don't have a ManuMatic. Last up, and this is funny, clutch thigh. Have you ever heard of clutch thigh? Clutch, I can't even say it. Clutch thigh is when you build up your thigh because you're constantly driving in heavy traffic and constantly having to push that clutch up and down, right? I mean, think about it. If you're in rush hour and you're just kind of crawling along, and in some parts of the country, this rush hour can be 1 or 2 hours where you're just in stop and go traffic, you know, where you don't go fast enough to stay in any one gear because you have to stop constantly, and you're not moving fast enough where you can even stay in the lower gear without having to shift up or down. So you develop something that's being called clutch thigh. And that's where the muscles in your thighs, or your calves, grow because you're working that leg all the time. I'd be really curious to see, maybe somebody who lives in a city that drives for a living, like a truck or something like that, that experiences this on a daily basis. I wonder if you can actually see the difference. I don't know. Now, out of all these things, what do I think? What do I agree with? I think there's 2 reasons really for me. One, and one isn't mentioned here, and that's pure convenience. Let's face it, it is easier to drive an automatic. You don't have to worry about shifting gears. You don't have to learn that fine dance between releasing the clutch, pushing on the accelerator, which to me is a lot of fun. But it's just simpler, and we're lazier today. We want everything done for us. You know, hence the advent or the upcoming self-driving car. If you don't think that's going to take off, you watch and see what happens. Once they perfect that, you just get in your car, push a button, hit a coordinate, and go. It's coming. The other thing is rush hour traffic. As traffic becomes worse and worse and people have to sit in it for hours to get to work, driving in rush hour traffic with a manual transmission is admittedly not fun. It's not fun to have to go through the gears constantly. If you're in it long enough, eventually your legs do get tired. It happens. Those are the 2 biggest reasons, I think, why the manual transmission is dying, or maybe it's already dead. So if you want a manual transmission, at least a new manual transmission, you better get out there within the next, I'm guessing 2 to 5 years, and pick one up. Otherwise, all you're going to have left is the aftermarket used versions, because you're not going to be able to get a brand new manual transmission anymore. There's only a couple left in the US that sell them now. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Why is the manual transmission dying? Let me know what you think. As usual, appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time on the web. Have a great day. Bye.